What is a standard possession order? I get that question all of the time. It's kind of confusing. I don't blame you for asking. Here's the thing, that's the default way that Texas is going to arrange custody between two spouses upon divorce or between two parents who maybe were never married but are sharing custody of a child. Let me explain, generally speaking, how it works. A standard possession order is that thing you've heard of forever where dad usually gets every other week in custody. And I say dad usually, like, look, you may or may not know my story, but whenever I was first divorced, I was the dad. I had my kids every other weekend. So that's not in a judgment way. I'm just explaining so that you'll have the context of like that guy who has his kids every other weekend. Probably what they're referring to is the standard possession order. And it's not exactly every other weekend. In that situation, the person who does not have the right to determine the primary residence of the child, or children, which is the non-primary parent, or the Office of the Attorney General would say the non-custodial parent, which I hate that. I hate saying non-custodial, but it's like what they call you on the child support website. That person would have the children the first, third, and fifth weekends of the month, and then for Wednesday night for dinner, and then for a month in the summer that they can have like 30 days in July, or two different periods of 1 week, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, like you can kind of split it up. And then you switch off all of the holidays, okay? Now, I don't know how many years ago, but a while ago, the Texas legislature increased the standard possession order to allow for an expanded standard possession order. Say that 5 times fast. But the ESPO, where it's the standard possession order plus. That's how I think of it. Like, I'd like to value size that, please. And what you get in that situation is the first, third, and fifth weekend. And then the non-primary parent also has the children every Thursday night during the school year. So what that ends up doing is you have from Thursday when school gets out until Monday when school goes back. So you school to school pickups is a difference too. So Thursday when school gets out till Monday when school goes back on the first, third, and fifth weekends. And then on the second and fourth weekends, you have the kids Thursday from when school gets out till Friday when school goes back. So like every Thursday, and then every other weekend for a long weekend. And like for the primary parent, the good thing about that schedule too is every other weekend, you have a long weekend to yourself. Right? I mean, it's a good or a bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. I suggest you find a way to look at it as a good thing, but it's hard at first. No, I understand. But you would have every other, you'd have that break every other, or first, third, and fifth weekend for the long weekend, the month in the summer, and things like that. All right. But then when it becomes summertime under the ESPO, you lose the Thursday nights and you go back to that normal standard possession order of first, third, and fifth weekend visits from like Friday afternoon till Sunday afternoon. Okay. And generally speaking, this is what's going to happen in your divorce or custody case in Texas. And that's because the legislature has said it is presumed that the standard or expanded standard possession order is in the best interest of the children. So anytime that a court would order something different, they're putting their neck on the line because they're stepping out of what is in the law, saying it's the best thing for the kids. And it subjects them to appeal, or what's called a mandamus, or turning things over. Now, all of that to say, y'all can agree to whatever you want. And some of those, what are called bespoke, like, a bespoke suit, if you're like a custom suit kind of person, like a bespoke custody schedule. And some of the common ones would be like, you've heard of 50-50, right? 50-50 where a week on, week off. Or they do schedules that are 2-2-5-5, where somebody has the kids on Monday, Tuesday, somebody has the kids on Wednesday, Thursday, and then y'all alternate weekends. So you'd have the kids for 2 days, and then the next week you'd have them for 5 days in a row. There are different schedules if like you're a firefighter or a police officer, or your job has you travel like an oil field person, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. In the Texas Family Code, it requires that exceptions are made to accommodate those sorts of work schedules. So if that's you, you definitely need some advice to consider the options. But in general, I just want to save you a bunch of time, money, and effort raging against the machine. Like the standard possession, expanded standard possession thing is probably going to be what is happening for you. Now, I'm not saying which side of that coin you're going to be on, but I want to posit for you that maybe you don't have to have a big old war about it after all. Because when you actually calculate the parenting time, it gets pretty close, depending on the year and the way the holidays fall and is it leap year and all that, to being 50-50. Like, you don't get quite there, but I think sometimes it's as high as like 44-45%. So I just want you to think through carefully, am I really going to spend 50, $100,000 on a custody case, fighting, burning the whole world down, making an enemy out of my ex, putting my kids through heck just for another 4% of custody time, another maybe 1 or 2 nights a year? And that's the core advice I always give my clients. You've got to keep the main thing when you're getting divorced. And especially when it concerns custody, when you really get real about what we're talking about into the weeds, you may find that the principle of the matter really doesn't have that much of a practical import in your life. So make sure you're with an attorney who can help you think things through and not get stuck on labels, because people spend a lot of money, a lot of energy, a lot of time, and a lot of drama because they're stuck on the label of, I want to be the primary parent. I get it. Like that, not being the primary parent can feel kind of crappy. I've been there. I've been the non-primary parent. I have to tell you, especially as a mom, and I think a pretty good mom, that's a pretty humbling experience. So I relate to you in that. And I'm going to tell you, the resistance is the pain. And if you can let go of resisting that title or the need for the title, because somehow it's like she approves of you, he approves of you, the court approves for you, you're a good parent because somebody called you primary. Like, if you can opt out of that way of thinking, the rest of your life will go better. Because when you dig into the weeds of it, you'll see they're really not that different, or they don't have to be that different. I'll be real with you. One of the ways that it can be really different is the person who is the primary, and like the primary parent, people say, I want to be the primary parent. Do you know what you're really saying? You're really saying, I want to be the parent with the right to determine the primary residence of the children. That primary word is like who gets to say where their main house is. That's all that it is. We don't label somebody a primary parent, but it's shorthand so that people know what you're talking about. Now, look, it's also in the Texas Family Code that if you are the primary parent in the way I just described, you're the one who has the right to receive child support. So like that can be a big deal. You can negotiate about that. But the child support piece, it does go with that primary designation. So I'm going to be like, that can have a huge impact on your financial situation. So that is one of the factors. But if we're talking just true time with your kids and money isn't the main thing, and I don't mean main thing like in a judgy way, but like it's not something that is going to make or break the decision for you, that label in terms of time really doesn't have to account for that big of a difference. And maybe your lawyer can help you come up with some creative ways to get more time. Like maybe you could get every Easter if that's your favorite holiday, or maybe you could get an extra week in the summer and then make that scale pretty even. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about how child support works. We were talking about the right to determine the primary residence, and with that, the right to receive periodic payments of child support. All right, generally speaking, that is presumed to be in the best interest of the children. Like, that's basically how it's going to go, absent some other factors. And remember, a court is protected, a judge is protected in ordering child support in that situation because the law says it's good for the kids. And the way that they figure out child support might kind of surprise you. In the Texas Family Code, they provide for what's called guideline child support. And let me explain what that means. I really, like yesterday, I'm teaching a class at St. Mary's, and I was pulling up the code and looking at this again with fresh eyes because I'm trying to explain to students how it works. And when I did that, I really was digging in to say, like, okay, how is the code set up to determine child support? And what happens is Texas favors what's called a bright line rule in law world, meaning like it's a real clear rule. Sometimes that real clear rule, it doesn't feel that fair, even if it has the benefit of like minimizing litigation, minimizing fighting, because it's just like the rule, bro. Okay. And the way that works is if you're the person who's going to pay child support, Texas can go ahead and tell you how much child support your most likely going to pay. And the way they do that is they take your net resources, which I'll tell you about that in a second, your net resources, and take a certain percentage based on how many kids that you have. So if you have one child, it's 20% of your net resources, two, it's 25, three, it's 30, and so on and so forth. And the thing is about net resources, that's not the same thing as net income, okay? And that's confusing, like, I know, but it just is. So basically, to get to your net resources, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your gross income and you can back out the main things like tax withholding, FICA stuff, Social Security, things like that. But you're not going to back out how much money you put in your 401k. You're not going to back out like pre-tax, cafeteria plan, stuff like that. So that's why it's different from your net income. You're just going to back out those very few things. And then if you're going to be the one to pay for health insurance for the kids, you can back that out. And then that number is your net resources. And then you calculate your percentage. So generally speaking, that's the number you're going to pay if you go to court, because it's just one issue the judge doesn't have to fuss with. Let me see your pay stubs. Let me see your tax returns. Bada bing, bada boom, we got a number. Obviously, you can negotiate for a different number. If there are extenuating factors, you can change it. Like, do we have a disabled ex-spouse? Do we have a disabled child? Was there domestic violence? Like things like that, some extenuating circumstances. And the Texas Family Code includes a list of the factors that can be considered, but like, I'm gonna save you a whole bunch of time and wishful thinking. Probably that's not gonna happen for you. The other thing you need to understand about child support is if you're the one who's paying child support, you're probably also going to be on the hook for paying for the health insurance, either by carrying them on your own employer-provided health insurance or by reimbursing your X Factor for carrying them on their health insurance. And it's not a split of the premium. And like people rage against the machine on this, like I get it. I'm not saying that it's fair. I'm just saying it is what it is. So you're going to have the statutory guideline child support amount. You're also going to have the cost of carrying them on health insurance, and that also includes dental. So, that's usually not that much money, but you've still got to do both. And then the way the other person who's the non-primary parent comes in is they will likely have to split with you the cost of unreimbursed medical expenses. So like copays and deductibles and things like that, they'll have to split, but the rest of it's kind of going to be on you. And sometimes that's hard for people to hear. It doesn't seem fair. And they'll come in and they'll explain to me all the reasons why that shouldn't be. And you have to provide a second set of stuff at your house. You take them on vacations. They have their own bedroom. You have them almost 50% of the time anyway. Like I have heard it, ladies and gents. Like I get you. I feel you. And it is what it is. So you can resist it and spend a bunch of money and even go to trial trying to argue it should be something different, or you can accept it, cut your expenses, cut your time in half and just be like, all right, it is what it is. I don't love it. It's going to be for some period of time. And hopefully you could even work towards building a really good relationship with your co-parent. That's the ideal. And maybe you could have some input on how that money is spent, like, and how we're spending on extracurriculars and things like that. Like you don't by law have the ability to do that, but lots of things can be accomplished if you maintain some semblance of decency with your ex. But that's how child support, generally speaking, is going to work in Texas. That's how the custody scheme is set up. And if you know the basics, I think it really helps you be armed with information so that you don't waste a lot of time with your lawyer having them argue with you that it is what it is. Instead, you can just watch this free video and now you know.